Hey guys, this is Miss Nairmore. I hope you are all doing well and your family are doing well. I'm actually at my granddaddy's lake house at Lake Martin this morning. My family and I came down here for the weekend. My husband and oldest son are out fishing this morning. So I have a little change of venue, so change in background, so it's not just my wall at my house. But again, I hope you guys are doing well. We're going to pick up at chapter 17 today in Milkweed. Make sure again that you read over the study guide before you listen and follow along. It will definitely help you if you know what you're listening for. Okay, and I know we talked a whole lot about that, and it helps with your reading comprehension. So I'm going to pick up in 17. We're going to read through chapter 24 today. So I'll have two videos broken up again. So this will be 17 through 20, and the next video will be 21 through 24. Suddenly, so this is starting in chapter 17. It's on page 49 if you're following along in the PDF document. Suddenly, everyone was living with Yuri and me in the stable. Enos the grim-face, Kuba the clown, Ferdy the smoke blower, one-armed Olek, shoeless Big Henrik, Gray, unspeaking John, and others. And others, boys no one seemed to know. We stick out like purple turds, said Enos. He said that since the rest of the Jews went to the ghetto, the boys could no longer blend in with the street crowds. And there's finches everywhere. What's finches? I said. People that tell the jackboots where Jews are hiding. I'm glad I'm not a Jew, I said. He gave an ugly laugh. Don't worry, the ghetto is for you too. I hear they take gypsies, and cripples, and crazies. If you want to be safe, be a cockroach. There must have been a finch around because one morning as we were sleeping in the hayloft, the door flew open and voices shouted. We scrambled like cockroaches, but jackboots were everywhere. One of the new boys jumped from the loft. He was shot in midair and flopped to the floor like a rag doll. They marched to the ghetto. Since they had finished the brick wall, topped with broken glass and coils of barbed wire, I had not been able to visit Janina. I took this as a personal insult and challenge. I had never before been kept out of any place I wished to be, and I had no doubt that I would soon find my way to the other side of the wall. Still, I wasn't too proud to be grateful that the escorts were making it so easy. Something else occupied my mind even more along the march. Yuri, he wasn't with us. When the jackboots rousted us into the stable, he wasn't there. That was not surprising. In recent weeks, Yuri was often gone, sometimes for days at a time. With his red hair and eye belong here invisibility, Yuri believed he would never be seen as a Jew. He was fearless on the streets. Also, he believed he was much smarter than the jackboots. I always knew that when Yuri was about to disappear, he would put his fist under his chin and whisper between his clenched teeth, Don't let me hear. He meant that he appointed some of the boys to finch on me if I did something especially stupid and silly. I think he would have been surprised to know that I actually was heeding his warning, and as much as I was capable of heeding a warning. For some reason, I felt freer to be stupid and silly when he was there more than when he was not. It never occurred to me to worry about Yuri. I believe he knew everything and could handle anything, but prodded along with jackboot rifles, I did wonder about him. Where was he? What was he doing? What would he think if he returned to find the stable empty? I did wonder if he would find us. I knew he would. I did not wonder if he would find us. I knew he would. Instead of the sidewalk, the jackboots marched us down the middle of the streets. Horse wagons and automobiles made way for us. People stared. We are a parade, I thought. But for this parade, the people were not silent. Bye-bye, you little snots. Over the wall with you, filthy Jews. I didn't bother to tell them I wasn't a Jew. On one street, we marched down the trolley tracks, and there came a trolley heading right for us. We hesitated. The jackboots shouted. We continued. We did not stop. The trolley did. Then, with a clank and a clang, it began to move backwards, and that was how we went down the street, the trolley backing up before us as we marched on. Soon we turned onto another street, and there was a wall. To the left and right, it went on forever in both directions. The bricks were red, the sky was brilliant blue, and the knots in barbed wire sparkled like ladies' earrings. A yellow bird landed on a curlicue of wire, stayed for a moment, and flew off. We came to the gate in the wall. The guards opened it. We marched through. The jackboots stayed behind. One of them bowed deeply. I didn't understand that he was mocking us. I bowed back. He kicked me in the rear end and sent me sprawling to the ground. The gate slammed shut. I made a beeline for the Milgrams' apartment. When Janina opened the door, I announced, "I live in the ghetto now." "Just what we need," said Uncle Shepsel, "another neighbor." I didn't see Janina's mother and father. "Where are your parents?" Janina told me that her father had been taken out of the ghetto and out of the city on a work detail. Her mother was sewing uniforms for jackboot soldiers in the Warsaw factory. Only people with work permits were allowed through the gates in the wall. "Let's go outside," I said. We bolted from the apartment and ran downstairs, Uncle Shepsel shouting, "Wear your armband!" It was cold and bright outside. We ran about the courtyard like let loose puppies. Uncle Shepsel's voice came down from the window, "Your armband!" We ran out to the street. "Why don't you wear your armband?" I said to Janina. "Why don't you?" she said. "I'm not a Jew." "Well, I'm just a little girl. Who cares about a little girl?" She twirled about. "Besides, we live in the ghetto now. Pete. Sorry, that's my doggy. Let's see. We ran down the street. To my eyes, this side of the wall looked very much like the other side. Crowds of noisy people. Even the fox furs riding the shoulders of the rich ladies seemed as if they might speak out at any moment. Everywhere we went were people selling things, calling out, "Mirror, mirror, unbroken. Beautiful pictures, 3 for the price of 1. Toys, toys, hairbrush, cheap." I saw a boy with one arm. "Oleg," I cried out. We ran to him. Oleg squinted at us, shading his eyes with one hand. "Oleg has one arm," I said to Janina. She punched me. "I can see." She turned to Oleg. "What happened to your arm?" Oleg looked down at his right shoulder. For a moment he seemed surprised to find the arm was gone. He frowned. "Train," he said at last. Janina reached out. "Don't be sad. This one is good." "This is Janina Milgram," I announced proudly. "She's my sister." It just came out. Oleg looked at her, but he did not smile. We all looked at each other for a while, then went on our separate ways. Later we saw gray, unspeaking John. He was sitting on the sidewalk, his back against the ripped wall of bombed-out building. "Hello, John," I said. John did not seem to hear me. His eyes were closed. "He's sleeping," Janina whispered. Then just one of John's eyes fluttered open. "This is Janina Milgram," I said. Janina held out her hand. "Hello." The eye closed. I whispered in her ear, "He doesn't talk." Janina pulled me away. "Let him sleep," she said. I raised my voice as if he were far away. "She's my sister." As we walked away, I said, "John is gray. He's sick." Janina said, why do you tell them I'm your sister? I'm not your sister." I shrugged. I didn't know. Before we got back to Niska Street, we heard squeals and shouts down an alley. A knot of children was writhing on the ground. Suddenly, one of them, a boy, popped out of the knot and came running towards us. As he sped by, I could see the clutch of a potato in his hand. Some of the other children raced after him. The rest dragged themselves off down the alley. Janina looked at me. "What happened?" "Unlucky orphans," I said. I told her that was Enos. I told her that's what Enos called them. Orphans who did not live in Dr. Korskit's home or any other, and who roamed the streets hungry and begging and sick. "Be glad we're not unlucky orphans," I told her. "Is Gray John an unlucky orphan?" she said. "Oh no," I said. "He's a lucky one. He's with us." Chapter 18. This is on page 52. Winter. Yuri had found us by the first morning inside the wall, but now we saw even less of him. "Do you go to the other side?" I asked. "Do you have a work permit?" "Don't ask," he said. One cold day, Yuri and I were on the street. I was wearing 2 coats, but I could not make my feet warm. There were so many people. I saw a boy. At least I thought it was a boy from his size. He was lying on the sidewalk. I wondered how he could sleep with all the noise and people. It was very strange. He was not in a doorway where I had often seen people sleeping. He was not even on the edge of the sidewalk. He was right in the middle. The people just walked around him, making the shape of an eye. It was also strange that although no one seemed to see him, no one tripped over him. But the strangest thing of all was the newspaper. It covered him like a blanket. Yuri, I said, that boy is stupid. The newspaper can't keep him warm. Nothing can keep him warm, said Yuri. He's dead. We were stopped, looking down at the dead boy, the only ones not walking by. Come here, Pee-Pee. Come here, bud. Come here. Why is he dead? I said. Did a jackboot shoot him? Yuri shrugged. Maybe. Or no food, or the cold, or typhus. Take your pick. What's typhus? A sickness, very popular. Unlucky orphan. Yeah. He pulled me along. From then on, I saw dead people under newspapers every day. It was easy to tell the children. Only one page was needed to cover them. One day I asked Yuri, why are they covered with newspaper? So nobody can see them. But I can see them, I said. Yuri did not answer. Then I saw one of them become seen by a man. He stopped in front of me. He put his foot on top of the humped newspaper and tied his shoe. The same bodies were never there 2 days in a row, but there were always new bodies in the new places. Sometimes the feet were sticking out of the newspaper. In the first days, the feet always had shoes. Then they stopped having shoes. Then the socks were gone. In the nights, I wondered, who put the newspapers over the bodies and who took the bodies away? I thought, angels. Chapter 19. The boys and I, we slept in the rubble. We did not have a blanket, but we did have a round braided rug. We all slept together under it. But that wasn't our main blanket. Our main blanket was ourselves. We slept with our arms around each other, our noses pressed into each other's necks. Enos called it trading lice. If anybody farted, he was kicked out of the rug. When Yuri was with us, I slept next to him. Many nights he wasn't there. I wondered where he was, but he said, don't ask, so I didn't ask. We were huddled like kittens. We were huddled like kittens, the bunch of us. We were the voices in the dark. Often we talked about mothers. Though I could not remember mine, I had a pretty good idea what a mother was. Not Ferdy. He was always saying, I don't believe in them. Where do you think you came from? Said Enos one night under the rug. An elephant? Who do you think you are with those ladies holding children's hands? Said Oleg. Who do you think all those ladies holding children's hand? Said Oleg. Fakes, said Ferdy, whose answers were never long. He blew more smoke than words. Everybody has a mother, said Kuba. Everybody. Orphans, said Ferdy. Whenever he spoke, you could smell cigar breath. Orphans had mothers too, dummy, said Enos. They're dead, that's all. Real mothers don't die, said Ferdy. No one had the answers to that. So he talked about oranges. Like mothers, oranges were a common topic. Enos said he had eaten them many times, but Ferdy said they were all only made up. What do oranges taste like? I said, Enos. He closed his eyes, like nothing else. What do they look like? Like a sun before it sets, Ferdy said. Oranges don't exist. In the morning light, most of us would begin to believe in mothers and oranges again, but for now, under the rug in the pitch blackness, hearing the faint sounds of the city from the other side of the wall, Ferdy had given us doubts. Each morning we crawled out of the rubble onto the streets. Sometimes we stayed together, but mostly we went our own ways. In a group, there were more of a target for the flops who were in the ghetto police. We had no armbands, no identification papers, no records, nothing. We don't exist, said Ferdy under the rug one night. Enos's voice came. Tell that to my stomach. Enos wasn't the only one. All of us were hungry. That was something new. Until now, we had simply taken what we needed to eat. All of Warsaw had been our food market. Even in the ghetto at first, there had been food for the taking for quick hands and feet. But now, after months of winter, we were finding our hands and our stomachs empty. Ladies no longer walked down the street with loaves and paper bags. Bakers didn't bake, and there was no flour. There were shops here and there, but the shelves were mostly empty. Where was the morsel of food on a shelf? There was someone standing in front of it, often with a club in his hand. Yuri came with food sometimes, a jar of molasses, a turnip. When we brought chewing gum, we chewed the sugar out of it, then swallowed it whole. Yuri, when he brought chewing gum, we chewed the sugar out of it and swallowed it whole. Yuri said, "They're starving us." "Why?" I said. "To get rid of us, to kill us," said Enos. "Why don't they just shoot us?" I said. Enos snickered. "Save money on bullets." In the beginning, come here, Petey. In the beginning, there were horses in the ghetto, but then they began to disappear. Sometimes parts of them reappeared on Geisha Street. Geisha Street became an outdoor market. It was known that if you had food to sell, that's where you went. People stood on the sidewalk in the snow, resting on an unturned crate or school desk would be the shank of a horse or the side of a dog or cat, a box of salt, a licorice stick, an onion, a potato or two. The vendors hugged themselves against the cold and cried out, "Fat here, nice goose fat. 20 lotties. Bones, bones, crack the bones, lots of marrow. Pigeon, squirrel, dog, best offer." At first, the animals appeared in the market in their feathers or fur, as naturally dead as the foxes that some of the ladies still wore around their shoulders. Then, if they had fuel for fire, the vendors began to skin and pluck and roast them. The carcasses were laid out, blackened and crusty, and minus their heads, the vendors' cries went out and the prices went up. One day I walked along Geisha Street with Enos. The smells of the roasted animals made my mouth water. I hadn't eaten since the day before. Men with clubs stood by the displays of food. Flops walked the streets. Enos himself seemed not hungry but playful. He wiggled down the street and fluttered his fingers and made his voice high and fancy like a fox fur lady and said, "Oh yes, that's lovely. I'll have a pound of that, please, and that nostril of a horse." I was laughing at Enos, and the men with the clubs were swatting at us, telling us to move on. And then I looked at Enos's face, and suddenly I knew he wasn't playing after all. He winked at me. I grabbed 2 sparrow birds from under the fallen club, and both of us ran till we couldn't hear the screams behind us. In time, there were no birds and dogs along the Geisha Street market, but the vendors never seemed to run out of squirrel. Soon everybody knew why. The charred, headless, tailless bodies laid out on the crates were not squirrels at all. They were rats. But the cry of the vendors never changed. "Squirrel, squirrel!" One day on my own, I snatched 2 roasted rats. I ate one for myself and took the other to Janina's house. I kept the rat in my pocket so no one would take it from me. Only Janina and Uncle Shepsel were home. Mr. Milgram was off to the work camp as usual. Miss Milgram was at her job at the jackboot uniform factory. I looked at the rat in my pocket and held it up by one leg for them to see. "I brought you a squirrel," I said. Uncle Shepsel laughed. "Not only do you smell, you're stupid," he said between laughs. "That," he flicked and swung by its one leg between my fingers, "is a rat." Janina took it from me. She made a face at Uncle Shepsel. "It's a squirrel. I'll save it for Mama and Tata." Come here, Petey. Come here. Uncle Shepsel coughed. He looked around for somewhere to spit, then spit on the floor. Janina punched his arms. "Tata said don't do that. Spit out the window." Uncle Shepsel said, "Your mother and father know a rat when they see one. They won't eat it." Janina stomped her feet. "It's a squirrel." "They will. They're hungry." "So am I," said Uncle Shepsel and snatched the rat from her hand. Janina grabbed it back, and now they both had it. Janina pulling on the tiny front legs and Uncle Shepsel on the back. They grunted and scowled at each other. The rat came apart in the middle. Come here, Pee-Pee. Janina staggered backward on her rear end. By the time she got up, Uncle Shepsel was munching on his half. She tried to reach it, but he was too tall. He kept swatting her away in his free hand as he finished off his meal. I was there when Janina's mother came home from her job. I saw the delight on her face when Janina said, "Mama, food," and I saw the look change when she said what it was. When Mr. Milgram came in, he looked at the little half carcass and shook his head sadly and said, "No, not yet." He went to the mattress and lay down with Miss Milgram. Janina started to cry. She threw the rat on the floor and kicked it at Uncle Shepsel. Uncle Shepsel picked it up. I left then as he was brushing floor dirt from the rat. The next day I began walking along the wall. Until then I had not thought much about the other side. Now I thought, there's food over there, more than rats. The gates in the wall were guarded by jackboots and flops. The wall was much too high to climb over, and even if I could get to the top, there was a thicket of barbed wire and broken glass. All that day I walked and looked. At last I saw something. It was not far from the uniform factory. There was a break in the bricks. It was low enough for me to reach. It was 2 bricks wide. I didn't know it, but there was a drain hole of some sort. It would never occur to them that anyone could squeeze through a space 2 bricks wide. I left then and came back after dark. I was through the hole in a second. I stood on the other side. Chapter 20. I expected to come back with so much food I'd have to push one item at a time through the 2 brick hole. But all I could find was a jar of fish chunks. As I squeezed back through the hole, the jar fell and broke. I picked up the chunks, brushed off the dirt, ate one, and stuffed the rest in my pockets. I went straight to the Milgrams. Uncle Shepsel gave his usual greeting. Ah, the smelly one. It was dark outside, and but there was electricity this night. A single light bulb dangled from a cord on the ceiling. Miss Milgram was on the mattress. Mr. Milgram was at one table, seated at the only chair, doing things with his pills and bottles. There was a large purple whelp on the side of his neck. It looked like an eggplant. Janina was laughing. What's funny, I said. You, she pointed. You peed yourself. I looked down. The front of my pants were soaked. It was the juice from the fish chunks in my pockets. I have food, I announced proudly. I pulled the fish chunks from my pocket and put them on the table. Uncle Shepsel picked one up and sniffed it. Pickled herring. Come here, Piggy. I saw Miss Milgram's head rise from the mattress. Uncle Shepsel devoured his piece at once. Mr. Milgram and Janina each grabbed a piece and took it over to Miss Milgram. They laughed, seeing what they were doing. Come here, buddy. They laughed. Seeing what they were both doing the same thing, Mr. Milgram pulled Janina's head into his chest. I'll see to Mother, he said. Janina held her fish chunk up to the light bulb. The skin on one side was silvery. She turned the chunk over, studying it. Then she licked it as if it were taffy, each side of it. Finally, she bit off a little piece with her front teeth and chewed. She closed her eyes and smiled dreamily. It took her a long time to finish it. There were only chewing sounds as they ate their chunks of pickled herring. Everyone wore coats and hats and scarves, but all of them had taken off their gloves, the better to feel the fish. Their frozen breaths clouded the waxy smear of light. When the last chunk was gone, Janina pointed to me. She looked angry. You didn't eat. I was starting to explain that I had had a chunk before I arrived when the sound of the machine gun peppered the night. It was very clear. Then there were screams and thuds and running feet and shouts. Out! Out! Uncle Shepsel stood in the middle of the room and raised his hands and shouted to the ceiling. This is it! It's over! This is it! Shut up, said Mr. Milgram as he helped his wife up from the mattress. Janina gaped at the door. It was bedlam on the other side. Open the door, said Mr. Milgram calmly. Open the door, said Mr. Milgram calmly, before they come in for us. Uncle Shepsel continued to scream at the ceiling. This is it! This is it! I was about to open the door when Mr. Milgram said, No, wait. Slumped against one wall was a large stuffed cloth bag embroidered in black and green designs. Mr. Milgram reached into the bag and pulled out a blue and white armband. He slipped it over my coat sleeve on my right arm. I got this for you, he said. I opened the door. People were stampeding by, tumbling down the stairs, screams, shattering glass, gunshots. We made our way down to the ground floor. Janina squeezed my hand. I could feel her trembling. Bright lights flooded the courtyard. I shielded my eyes. Janina nudged closer to me. Voices shrieked out of the blinding lights. Move, move, all you filthy sons of Abraham, all you stinking Zionists, all you dirty Jewish pigs, line up, line up. Lines were forming, like a company of soldiers, I thought. Maybe we're going to be in a parade. We found places. We stood. "Silence, silence, you filthy swine," Mr. Milgram whispered. "Stand straight, look healthy." I heard Mr. Milgram. Sorry about that. Mr. Milgram whispered, "Stand straight and look healthy." I heard Miss Milgram groan. As we were lining up, snow began to fall. The flakes were fat and starry in the blinding lights. "Stand at attention," Mr. Milgram whispered. I didn't pay him much mind. He had no way of knowing how impossible it was for me to stand still. I had never stood still for more than 5 seconds in my life. Nevertheless, I tried. Mr. Milgram was on one side of me, Janina on the other. The soldiers screamed. With my new armband, I thought, I'm a Jew now, a filthy son of Abraham. They're screaming at me. I am somebody. I tried to listen well to hear what they were screaming, but I could not understand much beyond dirty and filthy and Jew. Something happened up front. The screams got even louder, screechier. I heard a hollow thudding thock as if someone were knocking wood. I leaned to one side, trying to see past the column of people in front of me. Mr. Milgram jerked me back. Attention! I was beginning to get the message. Standing at attention was very important. Perhaps someone was up front wasn't doing it right. I accepted the challenge. You want attention? I'll give you attention. I had seen many jackboots stand at attention. I straightened my spine, snapped my heels together, lifted my chin, stared at the back in front of me. I gave them my best attention there ever was. As the screaming went on, I assumed the others were not so good as I was. The back I stared at was green, a lady with a green coat. Snow kept falling. Sometimes a flake tickled my nose. I did not twitch. I did not move my eyes. I barely breathed. Flake by flake, the green shoulders of the lady turned white. Somewhere up front, a baby began to scream, then another to the right, then another. The louder the babies screamed, the brighter the lights. Jew dogs, filthy swine, thok, thok. Jackboots and flops came through the line, screaming into people's faces, poking them with clubs and rifles, spitting in their faces. A jackboot stopped in front of Miss Milgram. I could see from the corner of my eye. He screamed at her. She fell to the ground. Get up, Jew dog, filthy sow. Get up, he screamed. If he wants her to get up, I thought, why is he kicking and clubbing her? I didn't understand. At last, Mr. Milgram managed to pull her to her feet. The jackboot passed by me and Janina. I think he looked at me, but I could not see his face for the blinding lights behind him. For an instant, I felt proud, as if I had pinned a medal on me for standing at attention so well. When he came to Uncle Shepsel, he growled, "Open your mouth." I heard Uncle Shepsel give a whimpering "oh." He must have opened his mouth, for I saw a muzzle of a rifle come forward. I couldn't stand it any longer. I turned my head to see. I saw the muzzle go in Uncle Shepsel's mouth and push. Uncle Shepsel went backward into the lady behind him, who in turn fell back on the man behind her, and so forth, as the whole column of people toppled over. The jackboot laughed. I went back to attention. I didn't want that to happen to me. I had known from the start that the green-coated lady in front of me was in trouble. Her attention was very poor. She waved from side to side, sometimes her head dropped, and her shoulders were not straight at all. When a jackboot came to her, he must have seen it also. Down came the club. Thock! Then another bash across her chest. The snow went flying from her shoulders onto my face. I hoped the jackboot noticed that I didn't move. It wasn't long before the lady's shoulders were white again. Her head was drooping all the time now. I could hear her sniffling. The next time a jackboot came to her, he said, "You stinking sow, you smell like a pig farm." He clubbed her again, and again the snow flew from her shoulders. Then it seemed that all the jackboots were telling the people how bad they smelled. They were holding their noses. I was shocked. I had thought I was the only one who smelled bad. I sniffed, and I began to smell it myself. I was aware of tiny yips and whimpers erupting around me. I knew what the smell was, but despite what the jackboots said, there were really no pigs, and there were no pig flop in the courtyard. And then I felt down under my stomach the urge to go, and I understood what was happening. We had been standing there for such a very long time. The people were having to go, and there was no place to go. but where we were standing. And so people just relieved themselves where they were. I heard the sad shudders as it ran down their legs and into the snow. And when I couldn't hold mine any longer, I did the same. And even then, I remained at such splendid attention, I was tempting to call out the jackboots, "Hey, look at me!" The screaming never stopped. But now people were falling all over the courtyard, falling and staggering to their feet and falling again. It was easy to tell the people who had not fallen. They were the ones with the highest piles of snow on their shoulders and heads. I could now feel the faint weight of the snow on my head. I wondered how it looked. I took even more pains not to move. I didn't want my snow to fall off. I thought of the stone angel. I pictured the snow falling over it, 2 crests of snow rising on the tops of its wings. So silent, the both of them, the angel and the snow. I pretended I was a stone angel. I closed my eyes and pretended as hard as I could, and after a while I was convinced I could feel wings sprouting from my shoulders. I wanted to look, to see my wings, but I was an angel of stone, so I could not move. Next thing I knew, my face was in the snow, and Mr. Milgram and Janina were hauling me to my feet. "What happened?" I said. Mr. Milgram smacked me. "Quiet, they'll beat you. You fainted. You're too stiff. Bend your knees a little bit." This was all getting complicated, not to mention very tiring. I was supposed to move, but not move. I tried. I bent my knees. Jackboots screamed. Babies screamed. Light screamed. We stood so long my pants dried out. When we finally let us go, the sky was turning gray above the rooftops. We lurched across the snow. Mobs stampeded for the bathrooms. There was one on each floor. I myself did not understand bathrooms. I had never used one, never needed one. The world was my bathroom. I dragged myself up the steps with the Milgrams. Uncle Shepsel and Miss Milgram performed a groaning duet that grew louder with each step. I followed them into the room. I wanted only to sleep. I collapsed on the floor. When I awoke, I thought I was back in the courtyard under the blinding lights, but it was only the sun in the window, and Uncle Shepsel propped on his elbow, was pointing at me, saying, "Why is he sleeping here? He smells." "I regret to inform you," said Mr. Milgram, "that you are not a rose garden yourself these days." Uncle Shepsel pounded the floor. "He's not family." Mr. Milgram looked straight at him. "He is now." And that's the end of chapter 20, so we will pick up with 21 in the next video.